Okay, it's live to my 7 people. 7 people. 7 people. Cool. Yeah, you can watch. So this is my first video, and it's the beginning of hopefully many, which really the biggest thing here, and the reason that I'm doing this, thanks for liking it. The reason I'm doing this is because when I first did my first real estate deal, I was saying to myself that other people need to know this the whole time. And I'm going to get into why in a little bit. But basically, I want to start with telling everyone a little bit more about myself. And it's funny because everyone here knows me, but besides a few people, my parents had their own business growing up. So I was exposed to seeing life of entrepreneurs, I guess you could call, or just small business owners. My dad had a construction business, and it took him many years to build it, and it had a lot of up and downs. Despite a lot of hard times growing up, which I always saw and was always very present in the family life that we had. My parents still provided for me, and I was always very grateful for that. I was able to stay on track. I was able to go to college. I went to college and went to Manhattan College for electrical engineering, which was pretty big challenge. But, I found out sometime while being in college that, growing up with parents that, although they had a small business that was really tough at a lot of times, that working for the man wasn't for me. It rubbed off on me. I realized very quickly after my first internship that getting into a job where I had to, report somewhere 9 to 5 and live on someone else's terms is really just is just a really hard thing against what I'm used to. So my job, once I graduated college, I was able to graduate, got a job right out of school, an engineering job right out of school, great job, great paying job. But in the first couple months, I was already bored. And it's for a lot of reasons. One being I get very bored easily. And another reason, again, was going back to me growing up in a place where my parents didn't really have to answer to anyone as much as they struggled. So I realized there had to be a better way. So I started just digging into the internet like everybody else. I was very quickly turned on to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A lot of people know that book. If you haven't read that book, you should read the book. But essentially it changes the way, it basically flips everything you learn in school on its head, which is what you learn in school is get a good job, go to college, get good grades, get a good job, and work for someone for the rest of your life and retire. And that's it. And that's your game. Rich Dad, Poor Dad talks about using your money not to buy things, but to leverage into other deals and making your money work for you. It's really important, and that really changed my whole outlook, and that was exactly what I was looking for at the time. It felt great to me reading that book every day. I was reading the book. I remember having an internship in downtown Manhattan, and I would read the book. Actually, I'm pretty sure I bought the book from a guy on the street. I saw it, and I always heard it was a really good book. Pretty sure that's what happened. I was on Fulton Street. I was walking down Fulton Street to get lunch, and I saw there was a guy selling books on the street, and he had Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I picked it up because I remember reading on some blogs and stuff that it was the best book out there for starting your business career. So I just realized that. So basically, bought the book, read it, realized that there had to be another way. I started down a whole long, just a really long list of different business ventures. But ultimately, the whole reason that I did this was I wanted my hustle to reflect my financial gain, which is what, Rich Dad, Poor Dad teaches. A job, you work your ass off all week, you get a paycheck for the same amount. You coast all week, you get a paycheck for the same amount. I'm not saying you should coast, but it became very apparent to me that the people I work with, I just feel like either weren't earning it or just doing too much to make what they're supposed to. So, I really wanted my hustle to reflect what I was doing. So, I wanted the opportunity to grow beyond a weekly paycheck. That's really what I was looking for. I wanted freedom from being told when I can take vacation. It's really a lot of the normal stuff that a lot of people want, not to be, held down by everyone. But, the reason was visceral in the sense that, I lived with a family who owned their own business in general contracting, which is just peaks and valleys. I was really just exposed to it from day one. All the recessions would hit us the hardest because people really weren't getting contractor work. And I remember seeing my dad just really depressed and down, and the consistency was never there. And I think having the consistency and knowing that good days are to come, is really the big thing and the big player on why I really wanted to search for something better. I struggled a lot with that inconsistency. I struggled a lot with seeing the stress on my parents. It really rubbed off on me. And the thing that I was always kind of put up against was the fact that my parents did so much to provide for me and gave me, the opportunity to go to college and to go to a high school that I wanted to go to. And I get out of there and I get offered a great job, which is a stable job, which to them was what is success. And I felt bad that after doing all this work, I came to a point where I realized it wasn't for me, and I felt like I was doing all this and I felt guilty for it. And I really struggled with that. And I struggled with that probably every day, just thinking about like why, I spent so much time and I worked my butt off in college to get this degree that I kind of made it through by the skin of my teeth. And I got a good job, a job with great benefits, everything. I had everything, but I still wasn't fulfilled. And, I refuse to believe that even though my parents struggled with their own business sometimes, that, that means that's not the option. I really knew that I could make it work, and I knew that I could deal with it despite the objections from my family sometimes. And I know they were always looking out for my best interest, but it always was really tough for me. I really struggled with wanting to avoid what my parents experienced. Again, it always resonates with me, and sometimes I get kind of thrown in a batch of someone that's really greedy or just always looking for more money. And I think, and it really does stem from seeing my parents unhappy, and that killed me, and I don't want that for them, and I really just want to provide for them more than anything. It's really what I wanted to do. I want to provide for my family when I create a family, and I just want to give everyone what I didn't have sometimes, which is consistency and ample financial gain. So because of this obsession to make money, I went on this wild goose chase. I'm a true alchemist by definition. Alchemist pretty much means I'm very always looking to the next thing. I'm always trying to figure out like what's best, like what's next, trying to always craft something, always have an idea, always. And even my friends have poked fun at me about it. You know who you are. My wife sometimes knows that like I can't stick to something. I'm always trying something new. And, it's a blessing and a curse, because in the one end, it got me to where eventually I wanted to get, but ultimately, it's really hard to deal with sometimes. But in nature, it got me to where I was, and I'm thankful for that. But I've tried anything and everything, and to a fault. I'm gullible. Really gullible. I will go after anything that I think has an inkling of a chance. I've been tasked with some crazy dumb stuff just to see if it could try to work. And again, that's my personality type. I see the good in everything. It kills me sometimes, and it did on numerous occasions. But, you know, I really wanted to make it past that. And, you know, the problem with it was I went through the ringer, right? It started with selling stuff online. I was in college and I knew that there was a better way, so I started trying to sell things online, whatever it was. Then it went to internet marketing, doing like affiliate marketing, trying to sell other people's products on Facebook and Instagram and whatever was around at the time. Did that for a while, met a lot of good people and planted a lot of seeds, but it was really, really frustrating. Made, you know, a couple bucks here and there. Eventually, after I graduated, I started looking into stocks. I got into penny stocks, which is the worst thing ever. Learned it really. And the other thing is too, is like when I get into something, I go after it full force. I study the hell out of it. So, I mean, I would buy every book, every course, every mastermind group, whatever, you know, being just out of college, I finally had some money and it was disposable income, and I would just spend it on stuff like that to teach myself. I eventually, I lost a lot of money in both, basically, on penny stocks. Didn't really get anywhere with that. Same thing with us trading options. It's where I took a couple $1,000 losses, and that was pretty much it for options for me. Then I created my own email marketing company with the help of a friend. That went well. That was my first taste of a real business. It went decent, but it was a really tough business. And after a while, got really just too much. Made some money in that, but it was my first taste of a business. I wouldn't say it was successful by any means, but it was a big learning experience. And this is what everything ended up becoming, you know? So I was trying everything and eventually, you know, led up to this real estate thing. I was listening to Secret Entourage, which is another, you know, mastermind type thing that I was a membership to. And there's this one guy that came on one time and he was talking about how to flip houses without needing money. And that just sounds pretty ridiculous, but I kind of went for it. And what the whole interview was about wholesaling. I won't get into wholesaling is, but it's kind of like you find a deal, you find some little old lady who has a house and she wants to sell it because she's, you know, has to move down south and the place is in shambles and she's afraid to call a realtor, and you buy it for a super discount and you rob the old lady and you sell it to some investor guy that has a bunch of cash, and you sell him the contract and you make money for showing him the deal. You make a commission. You're basically like a realtor, but not really. Anyway, went in full force on it. Tried to figure out how to do wholesaling. Didn't go great. New York is just impossible. Spent a lot of money on marketing. Tried everything. Would wake up on Saturday mornings to hang up signs, bandit signs on the road. It works for some people. It didn't work for me. I was super frustrated again. Just didn't know what the hell to do with it. You know, I kept going. I was trying all these things. And I remember during this time, like, you know, talking to my parents about what I wanted to do with this real estate thing. And again, my parents were always looking out for my best interest. And the biggest thing that I ran into is that they would always kind of resist my want to go it on my own. They would always try to convince me something that I was so against, which was, you need to stay in a stable job. This is the only way. Owning your own business is a pain, and it's you saw what it did to us. We don't want that to happen to you. And I used to get into arguments with my parents over it, honestly. I vividly remember one time we were all out to dinner, and I was at dinner, and we were trying to have a nice conversation, and it blew up into them telling me that it's not smart to go it on your own. And it really, I was fuming. My gut was turning. I was at this thing, and I'm like, wow, the closest people to me, like, don't trust me. They don't think I can do it. And I got up and I stormed out and I walked out of the place and I walked home in the cold, in the freezing cold. And I called my wife, my girlfriend at the time, and I told her, I'm like, no one understands. And I was really upset. It's really tough to be told things and when you want to try, but at the same time, deep down, I knew I was failing at everything. So I knew it wasn't I knew what they were doing, but I knew I could do it. But then how can I convince anyone that if I'm just sitting there and failing at everything I tried? So I failed and 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 continued to buy new programs, new things, trying it. The wholesaling thing didn't work. Tried that. I bought a couple different wholesaling programs. Maybe that wasn't the right one. So I didn't have money at the time. They tell you you could do real estate without money. That's the biggest roadblock is you need money. You need money to do real estate. You need like a good old deal of money. All the books tell you use your parents' money, use other people's money, use all this stuff. Like at the end of the day in New York, like you need like $50,000 to put down a down payment. I'm 25 years old. I have 20 grand, let alone 5 grand. But I kept at it. I knew real estate was the end goal, and that's for a number of reasons. But anyway, I don't want to harp on it too much, but essentially, I eventually found a mentorship program at my local real estate investment association, and I took that mentoring program, which kind of taught you how to it was the closest thing I got to anything of substance, and especially in the New York market since it was so tough, and they talk to you about the intricacies of all that stuff. So I took it, went to weekly classes in the nice part of spring when it was getting nice out. I would go to these classes for 8 hours on a Saturday and sit there and listen and take notes and just trying, like hoping this is going to be it. Like I spent so much money on this. I made my dad come in with me on it, and we went and we're just trying to listen. We're like, listen, we could crack this. My dad has background in construction. Like we'll find the money, we'll do something. And so many things we would get stuck on is finding deals and finding money. And that was it was always the hardest thing to come up with and figure out. And we had a round table thing, and then we sat down with the lady, Melissa, who runs this organization, and she sits down and she tells me, I think a good thing for you is to do this thing called, to use this loan. It's a 203K. I'm like, what's that? I never heard of it. And now at this point, I've been researching the hell out of real estate for 3 years, and I've never once heard of a 203K loan. And she's like, yeah, it's a government subsidized loan, which means basically the government is paying for it. It's a program from the government to try to get first-time home buyers to buy a house that's a foreclosure, or like a bank-owned property, or a type of hot property where you want to learn to flip. So I still didn't understand it, and she said, well, listen, it's kind of like this. They're giving you a chance to put a low down payment down, teeny tiny low down payment. And what you could do is you can use it on a property, and you can rehab it, and you know how to do it. You could fix it up, and you only have to put down a little bit. And then what you could do is, if you don't want to live in it, you can rent it out or rent it out partially to some people, and you can live in part of it. Or you could find a 2-family property, and you can live in one half and use the other half, and then rent the other half and have them pay off your mortgage. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, how did I not know about this? So I just kind of it seemed too good to be true, honestly. The way she was saying it, you'd only have to put down a little bit of money, and you get all this in return. I'm like, who does this? The government, of all things. It's like, okay, step back. I knew this was a thing. I never looked into it. I looked into it a little bit, couldn't find any information on it whatsoever. I'm just surprised. It's like such a good deal. Anyway, I stepped back, went back to worked for a while, and I don't know what came over me one day. I think what was happening was I kind of took a step back from the whole thing, and I was working, and I was getting back into the environment where I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. I was with a good job, but it was a new company, and like I still just didn't feel fulfilled. And I went after this. I went after this need of doing something again. And I remember this 203K thing sitting in the back of my head, and I did a little more research on it, and I said, listen, maybe I could get a pre-approval for this thing. I don't even know what it is at this point, honestly, but at this point I had saved some money. I have a decent, a decent little padding in my bank account for, I was working, I was still single, still not single. I was still, not married at the time, and me and my wife weren't living together yet. And, I was saving up, and I had some extra money. I'm like, it's not doing anything in the bank. So let's see what I could do with this. Like, if I have to put down only 3.5%, like my mentor said, I can maybe afford something. So I called my friend EJ, who's a member of this group, who's a mortgage broker, and I asked him about the 203K loan. And he said, yeah, it's like a great loan. Like, you should do it. And it's great. And I'm like, yeah, well, my plan is like, maybe I could find something that I could put an apartment in and then rent that out and then like live in it for a little while. And I heard that after a year, you don't have to really live in it anymore. You can do whatever you want with the property after that. You just have to live in it for a little while, show your intent to live in it. And, it's a first time home buyer loan. And I didn't have a house yet. So I jumped into it. I jumped into getting a loan, and thanks to EJ basically, when I just asked him about it, was like, well, we're going to get you pre-approved, blah, 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 blah. And before I knew it, I was sending him like my pay stubs and like my social, and I was getting my credit run. And it's funny because that would scare a lot of people, but that was the thing that really put this thing into motion for me. And really, I found this 203K loan, and I got on the phone with him. And one of the other big things about this was I asked him, I'm like, so what houses can I get? Can I, like, at the time I didn't know you could bid on foreclosures. And he told me I could bid on a foreclosure loan and bid on a foreclosure property, and that was huge to me. I'm like, wait, so I could bid on a foreclosure with only like $5,000? He's like, yeah. I'm like, so all these people have been telling me that for foreclosures you need hard money or you need like all cash, $250,000. I don't have $250,000. So I he's like, here's a list of websites. Go look for a house that just go start looking. So I started, and I went to, the first thing I went to was like homepath.com, which is all the Fannie Mae, HomePath. Anyway, they're all the federally foreclosed properties. And the first house, and I'm like, let me look at a duplex. That'd be great if I could live in it and rent out the other one. And it's a blessing in disguise. I mean, again, having EJ jump into this with me was, it caused me, action begets action. And this is something that I learned, which was the biggest thing for me, was just like, once you take the action and you make it happen. I had no idea what I was doing, but it took me 3 years to build up the balls basically to make this thing happen. And I did, and I got thrown into this. And because of that, I looked at for a house, and a house had just been listed, which is a duplex right near right near where I was living, right near my work. And it was a foreclosure. It needed so much work. It was an absolute disaster. I will post pictures on it on here soon. But it was exactly what I was looking for. And I knew this hit my plan. I mean, my whole thing was to find something that I could buy with this loan and rehab it and then rent out the property, and then I can make money on this. So I was able to find a property, put a bid on it immediately, and I think 2 days later I got it back. It was $270,000, and I bid on it, and the 3.5% down payment was about $9,500, and I had it. It was pretty much all I had, but I had it, and I put the down payment on, and before I knew it, before I knew it, I was in it. So it all seemed really good. I knew what the end goal was. I knew that there was a lot of, I know that there was going to be a lot of stuff in the way, but I really just tried my best to go after it. And the first thing I realized was it all looked good. And I've been blessed to find something that, I could bid on, and I have something, and now it's like so close to home and everything. And I just am looking at this property, and I'm just like, oh my God, it was a disaster. And I'm like, what the hell did I get myself into? And before I knew it, I was hit with the reality that this is a house that I'm buying, a $270,000 home that needed about $100,000 worth of work. So I was first now inundated with paperwork, closing this property. I had no idea about this 203K. There was no information on it anywhere. There was no information on what you needed getting into this. My mortgage broker, who was EJ, didn't really understand it too much, or wasn't his first time doing it. It was maybe his first or second time doing it, and there was just so much paperwork. And in retrospect, if I knew what was entailed on it, I would have been better prepared going into it. But the problem was from the get-go, I was shooting from the hip, and I just was inundated. The paperwork was just a nightmare, and it was a nightmare because we weren't ready for it. The 203K is a federal loan. They make sure you have to cross all your T's and dot all your I's. You need to follow a thing. Remember, they're giving you an amazing, amazing, amazing deal. But in order to earn that deal, you need to follow what they're giving you. You're making you earn it and work for it, because what you're getting in the end, it was just so priceless. And I'm so happy I never lost sight of that. The insurance, the paperwork of like the contracting, the back and forth, the HUD consultant, everything. It was 4 months to close on that property, and it was strictly because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And a lot of people in the mix were all just trying their best. And at the end of the day, EJ literally did everything he could in his power, and I'm thankful for that, to get this loan through. And I remember so many times thinking I was going to lose it and lose my down payment. And I mean, one of the times I remember, I was down at my wife's family reunion in Nashville, or right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And we're at a log cabin, and I remember being out on the deck, pacing back and forth. My heart was racing. I was looking around at all the families inside having a good time, and I'm screaming at my dad. I'm screaming at the lady on the phone that was the permit holder, because I didn't give her the right paperwork. And the mortgage underwriter was telling me that if I didn't get something in, that I was going to lose the deal. And I really thought at that moment that was it. My dad was telling me that there's no way we can get all this stuff in time. The permit person said that she wasn't signing the paperwork unless we gave her what my dad said we wouldn't get in time. My mortgage broker was telling me that this deal is not going to close and the seller's going to back out because it's already gone too long. And I don't know what I did, besides the only thing that kept me going was the fact that I was so invested in it. It became a full-time job for me to figure out how to do this. And it was to the point where my heart was racing the whole time. It never slowed down. I was having anxiety attacks basically that whole summer from this, and I'm not really selling it well. But at the end, I didn't lose sight of what was at the end, and I really hand it to my parents, teaching me how to stay persistent on things and just keep going at it, and knowing that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And the peaks and valleys that they had in their construction business, I learned that when you feel like you're at rock bottom, it might be rock bottom, but there's always up. There's always up. It's always going to come back. It's always going to get better. And I did my best, and I just pleaded with everyone I did around me. And I remember we had a 2-hour drive back to the airport, and I had to use my father-in-law's iPad, and which he didn't have internet, so I tethered my iPhone. I used the internet on my iPhone, which was going out, to use his iPad to create the document that they needed of the construction estimate that I had to send to my mom, who had to print it to bring it out to the permit lady, and she had to sign it, and it was just an absolute mess. But I did it, and now I could sit here and tell anyone exactly what to do, but the fact that I had to figure it out while I was driving in a minivan 2.5 hours in the rural area of Nashville was crazy, but it was worth it. And I closed on the property, and it was August 31st of 2016. I closed on the property. I had the keys. I walked up to the key. I took the keys and I walked to the house, and still was an absolute mess. And I looked at the house and I'm like, holy crap, I don't know what I got myself into. The fun's just begun, but I did it. And the rehab was luckily not as bad as it could have been, because of knowing the contracting business. But the good thing that I knew about the good thing about knowing the contracting business was I knew how to essentially hack the process of using the 203k loan rehab and dealing with the bank with getting this rehab done. I knew exactly what needed to be done, and I crafted everything in such a way that the rehab went, as much as it was long, it went pretty smooth. And I put a lot of stuff together to kind of make sure that it went smoothly. And my connection with the construction industry and my dad being such a huge help on the whole thing, I was really able to give them exactly what they needed. And that's a part that scares most people, but when you have a plan for it, it really is very effortless. And again, they're paying for your whole rehab. So but yeah, it was a crazy experience. But a year, pretty much almost to the day, I closed on the property. I rented both units out, and the reason is that the rehab that I did built so much equity into the property. Again, something that most people can't do with a regular loan. Built so much equity into the property that I was able to refinance out of the 203k loan and not have to be there anymore. So I now had a 2-family in a nice part of where I lived. A 2-family, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, both floors. And I refinanced out of it and hired a realtor and got 2 great tenants in it. And my mortgage payment's only $2,900 a month, and I make $2,450, roughly $5,000 a month off of what rent is. So I put $2,000 a month in my pocket. And when I refinanced, my house got appraised for $490,000, I believe, which is, I was into the loan. I did $270,000 for the house itself, and then $100,000 into $100,000 of rehab. Put me at about $130,000 of equity, which means I could sell the house tomorrow and make $130,000 in my pocket. So if you kind of listen to the beginning of this whole long, crazy story that I hope someone watches, $9,500 turned into essentially $130,000 plus $2,000 a month, all because I used this 203k loan. It was worth it. It was all worth it in the end. And really, the biggest thing for me was learning that I should have taken action 3 years ago. I've been hearing this nonstop, and I love this quote more than anything, and that's that the obstacle is the way. I was so daunted by path of like buying a house and like not knowing what to do. And the thing was if I just went and bought it and figured it out as I went along earlier, I'd be in a better position now, and I would be able to jumpstart this house. I mean, everyone always told me, just get your first deal. It doesn't matter what it is, just get your first deal because everything will fall into place after that. And I never believe it. You can't believe it because you don't do it. You don't know until you experience it. I will say after that deal, I've never had to worry about finding money for a deal anymore. I could leverage my house. I have $130,000 of equity in it. I could pull out of that for a home equity line of credit. I have a flip under my belt, and I can go to hard money lenders and show them exactly what I did, and they are willing to give me money. I'm in a flip right now where the hard money lender looked at that deal, saw that it was successful, and gave me money, basically all the money I needed to do a new flip. Procrastination doesn't get you anywhere. What does get you places is taking action, and what also gets you places is not having an idea what you're doing, but just learning as you go. That's the only way you're ever going to do it. You're never going to know everything. I learned so much. I didn't know anything, and I learned so much along the way, and now here I am, and my goal now is to regurgitate that to everyone that's interested in it. So, with the right tools, you can get there. With the right people around you, you can get there. You have a long way to go. I also realized that this one flip isn't going to change my life. $2,000 extra a month, you would think like it's great, and it is, and it makes a big difference. I pay for my rent to live in this apartment right now with that money. But there's still so much. I just am finishing a flip now, and it was also a challenge. Like, you're always going to have a challenge, but the thing is, if you don't take the risk and you don't take the leap, you're just wasting time. And the obstacle is the way. That's all I want to drive home is like, whatever's sitting in front of you that seems to be the problem on why you can't achieve what you want to achieve, that's exactly what you need to go after. So for me, it was not finding a deal. It wasn't knowing how to get the money, for me, it wasn't finding the deal. Like I didn't think about all day how I'm going to find a deal. I just went on the internet and just sent an offer in, like just attack it. And I attacked it, and I'm happy I did. And that's really my story. It's long, but I wanted to kind of just get this thing done and give a background. And my goal with this group and this page is to answer everyone's questions about any of this and try to get people into this, because I firmly believe that this is the only and best way to get into your first deal. There's so much crap out there in the real estate industry, and none of it is pointing to this, and it drives me nuts, because you don't need to be banging your head against the wall, sending yellow letters and putting up bandit signs and chasing your friends down for money for your first deal, and looking for little old ladies to sell or finance their house, and all this crazy technobabble and stuff to try to understand. All you need is the right vehicle, the right people around you, and, a lot of courage, and just go after it and sink yourself in mayhem. And it will all pay off in the end, because the first deal is the best deal, and it's the one that's going to slingshot you into the rest of it. The way I look at it is I could do 2 more of these deals, and really, I wouldn't even have to work anymore, honestly. I would, and I would always keep going at it, but you get in a position where you really think that that you can see the end of the tunnel, and you can get exactly what I was looking for at the beginning of this whole journey, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is using my money, putting it into a real estate investment that pays me every month. That's the best part of this whole thing. So that's it. If you have any questions, leave a comment, and leave a heart emoji also. Heart emojis only. All right. Thanks, guys.